Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Here we are in our first Shabbat of this new virtual reality. Lisa and I are back to bring you some more Shabbat music. I have a short Devar Torah prepared. We're going to sing Mishavei Rach for all the people in our own community and across the world who are in need of healing. And just be able to be together over Shabbat in this way. I hope that you're all at home having a sweet home Shabbat experience with your families and friends. Next week, we're going to make it possible to zoom into a live service. We'll be leading again together and have a time that we all log on and Zoom and can say Kaddish then and do a fuller service. For now, we're going to sing a few of our Shabbat melodies and psalms and just ease us into this new reality. If you have a copy of our Siddur and you want to follow along, we're on page 142, Shalom Aleichem. Our whole world needs angels right now. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Bimelech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Oachem Leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, We're going to turn to Yedid Nefesh, which in our Siddur is on page 128. What I love about singing this melody and these words at the beginning of Shabbat is the passion that is exuded in it. Source of mercy, draw your servant into your arms. I leap like a deer to stand in awe before you. This idea that we're leaping towards Shabbat, leaping towards a more peaceful time, toward God's presence, and we're all doing this in a great hope and prayer. Yedid Nefesh. now I'm going to imagine that you're all here in the room with us. Shiru Ladonai. We're going to raise up a Shir Chadash, a new song for this new opportunity to figure out how to pray. Page 131. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Masru Miyom Yom, Yeshuato, Sapru Agoyim, Yevoto, Bechol Ha'amim Niflotav, Ki Gadol Adonai, Umehol Aleinu, Next week, as we're Zooming, we'll make sure to do that a few more times so I can see your faces singing along. And now, before a few words of Torah, let's sing a Hashkivenu, the one that we love to sing together, Amen. It has the chorus of Amen, Amen. Asking God to please shelter our world with peace. There's a lot of fear out there, and there's not a lot that can manage to calm our fears in my world more than prayer and faith.
Hashirenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom.
Sometimes I think of the translation of amen being what she said, or yes, or right on. Today it feels like the translation is please, please. So a little Torah for this Shabbat, which because it's me, is starting in an unusual place, but I promise it gets to Torah. I was in a yoga class a few weeks ago, in a particularly challenging pose when my teacher started talking about changing how we talk to ourselves when we're in the midst of something difficult. In the context of yoga, that often sounds like this stream of negativity. I'm so bad at this pose. Why is it so easy for her to do it and I can't even stand without wobbling? I'm terrible at yoga. When will this be over? As she was imagining what we might be saying to ourselves in that moment, she chuckled and said, "It's like you need to consciously uncouple from the negative thoughts you might be having right now." We all laughed and she said it's good that she's able to crack herself up. I have to imagine that I was probably the only person in that room in that moment who thought, this is a great idea for a sermon. According to Gwyneth Paltrow, who made this concept famous in the context of divorce, conscious uncoupling brings wholeness to the spirits of both people who choose to recognize each other as their teacher. From this perspective, there are no bad guys, just two people playing teacher and student respectively. While most of the world rolled their eyes at Gwyneth Paltrow's perfection, extending to even imagining a perfect divorce through unconscious uncoupling, I have to say that I think it's a pretty profound and spiritual idea that extends far beyond two people disentangling their lives from each other. I can see why my yoga teacher used it when she did. As we were each struggling and sweating and perhaps berating ourselves for not being limber or strong enough, she offered up this radical idea. What if you made friends with the negative thoughts you're having and looked for how your struggle or your weakness can be your teacher? What if we could do that with all of the emotions or situations that challenge us? In our Torah portion this week, Ki Tisa, we see a perfect example of emotions getting the best of the Israelites. This is the famous Torah portion that tells the dramatic story of the golden calf. Moses ascends Mount Sinai to talk to God and receive the Torah, and when he takes too long in coming back down, the people start to panic. They are overcome with fear and allow their negativity to take over their thoughts. Did he die? Where is he? Without Moses, they think that they have lost their connection to God, so they turn to the familiar act of idolatry to calm their nerves. They lose their grounding and stop listening to the still, small voices within themselves. It is these voices that may not have panicked on their own, but that as a collective get swept up in terror. I can imagine rumors spreading throughout the camp. Moses is gone forever, we're doomed. So they convince Aaron to build a golden calf, and they worship it in the desert as they await Moses' return. This decision, this rash, impulsive decision, comes from the Israelites' desire for control when faced with a vast unknown, as well as a great fear of being left alone in the enormous desert. The result of that decision, of course, is that Moses descends the mountain, and upon seeing the Israelites dancing and rejoicing with the Torah, smashes the tablets with God's sacred handwriting upon them. That is a significant consequence to the Israelites' inability to separate from their fear. But what I wonder is, what would have happened if they had been able to take a breath and step back to create some distance from their fear and ask, how can you be my teacher? What can I learn from this moment? Sound familiar? I must confess that I had many moments this week of getting swept up in the panic that has overtaken many of our communities. The more articles I read, podcasts I listen to, people I see wiping down surfaces with disinfectant wipes, the more I feel my own sense of helplessness increase. The level of crisis feels at times like we are back in the wilderness, with no clear path before us and no leader showing us the way. Where is our Moses? But what if we could take a clear look at our terror and say, Even you are my teacher. What am I meant to learn from you? What can we all learn? How can we all grow from this experience? The Israelites were in a vast desert on a journey that was leading to a land they could not even imagine. We have a lot of unknowns before us, but we also have lots of resources in place to remind us that we are not, in fact, alone. Perhaps we will learn to reach out to one another, to depend on each other, to make more phone calls and check in on more friends because of our isolation. Maybe our overall health as a worldwide community will improve because of the lessons we're learning. Maybe we'll get the gift of sweet family time or cultivating a home Shabbat practice. Hopefully, we will all come to really and truly appreciate the gifts of our schools and communities now that we have to distance ourselves from them. Might it be possible for us to consciously uncouple from the panic and say, I see you and I feel afraid, but I'm going to insist on learning from you. As we enter into this first Shabbat away from one another, I want to remind you that Moses does come down from the mountaintop. He comes back even though the Israelites don't think he will. And our world will right itself too. We don't know how long it will take. We don't know how bad it will get. But we do know that we have an amazing community to lean on and our faith to guide us, even in our darkest hours. Shabbat Shalom. So before we close, we're going to do a Misha Be'erach. We have a lot of people in our own community who are in need of healing this Shabbat. So we're going to sing a Misha Be'erach, and then we'll do a closing song. Since what's a Shabbat service without a closing song? We're thanking the Shabbat of Megan Bison, Nina Levikova, Ricky Schaller, Carol Kurtzrock, Matthias Kurtzrock, Susanna Wilkinson, Karen Linkman, Lori Berg, Aviva Leah, Susan Weinstein, Yetta Hurwitz, and Zachy Welch. And as I sing, I invite you all at home to think of the people in your hearts and in your lives, and all of the vast thousands of unknown people that we have across the world who are sick right now, and bring them into this Misha Be'erach. One last thought. A Shabbat custom of someone who is more traditional observer of Shabbat is to turn off your phone. And I think my greatest wish for all of us this Shabbat is to put down our phones. I know that I have been bringing my anxiety and my fear and my obsessive article reading and podcast listening into my house. And I will be so relieved over Shabbat to be able to say, not right now. I'm not giving over to all the information that's out there. It can come back on Saturday night. So I really encourage you to give it away. for Shabbat.